everybody. So for those who don't know, I actually teach a parenting class for families with hurt children. And hurt children, that term, means a child who has been exposed to trauma of some kind. A lot of what I do focuses, a lot of what I personally do is within the foster and adoptive community because one, that area has a very large place in my heart. I have 2 adopted daughters, for those who didn't know. But in addition to that, it's also where there's a ton of children that need assistance and parents that are scrambling to figure out, the kind of how do I parent these children who've had these really just dastardly, these really significant things in their lives, and that does change the way that their brain functions, the way that their nervous system functions, a lot of other downstream consequences. That said, hurt children are everywhere. They're in families that are, supposedly healthy. They've just a child that has experienced some trauma that came out of nowhere. They are also, a lot of you out there are maybe adults that were hurt children, and either you're trying to parent now and you're really struggling, or you're just trying to kind of make sense of the past. And hopefully some of the things that we talk about over the next couple of these videos will kind of give you some background as to what all of that is about. Because parenting hurt children is different than parenting non-hurt children, right? If you've experienced trauma, the way that your brain works, everything within your inner body is different. And so what stimuli you react to and how you perceive the world is different. And so a lot of parents kind of get just kind of butted up against this idea that this was something that I did with these children and there was no problem, but now I've got this other child and I don't know, and the same stuff isn't working. Or maybe you're an adult now and you were a hurt child and you're trying to figure out why the quote unquote, the healthy normal ways of parenting, why they're so hard for you, or why you find them difficult, or why they're mismatched with kind of your expectations. There's a lot that goes into hurt children and traumatized children. And what my goal is a lot of the people in the class that I had, or I still have requested, where are the base principles? Can we get the base principles somewhere that we can kind of go back to and just use as a reference point? And I thought, I haven't had them in the video, so I thought it would be a good time to do it. So what I've decided to do is I think I'm going to do just single point lessons on certain aspects, the core principles of parenting hurt children. Some of it will be adoption and foster specific, but don't let that kind of put you to the side. Don't think that means that none of this will apply, because I guarantee you, even if you are not in the foster and adoptive community, if you have experienced trauma or someone close to you has experienced trauma, there will be information here that will be helpful for you. So today, what I would like to talk to is just kind of the idea behind parents in general when it comes to hurt children. It's funny because hurt children still love their parents. And it really confounds a lot of people. They can't understand, right? Because as if you have never been hurt and traumatized by a caregiver, it's very difficult for you to understand why you would want to keep somebody in your life, right? Right now, there's a ton of stuff in the social media about toxic this, right? Get rid of all those toxic people. You don't need toxic stuff. I've learned to love, to let go of those things that don't matter to me. And although those are really healthy responses in many cases, not always, but in many cases, it is very difficult to apply that reasoning to parents. Now, let me explain. We think, well, hey, somebody who abused a child, so somebody who physically abuses a child all the time, really bad, how could that kid still love that parent? Well, it's easy, right? It's easy when you think about the fact that everything from Hallmark specials to movies about dogs to just kind of the Norman Rockwell mantra of life, right? Your parents are there. They would give anything for you. They would do anything. You hear about parental instincts, that mama bear instinct, right? I would never let anything happen to my kid. I'm a tame little sweet bunny rabbit, but as soon as you mess with my kid, I'm tearing it up, right? there is some sort of weird in societal pride in talking about how parentally safe net that we make for our kids, which, I mean, it's not a horrible thing, right? So that's fine. But you don't think that there are kids who don't have that. Their parents didn't make those choices. Their parents chose to let them stay in danger. In fact, in some cases, their parents put those children in danger on purpose for money, for whatever else reason that they've done, right? So when you have this juxtaposition between what a parent, even a jacked up dysfunctional parent, right? Even the sitcoms that show a dysfunctional family, right? They always come through in the end. They always prove that the family is the utmost thing of importance, and they'll lay down all of these things. They'll quit their job. They'll come together. They'll stop being selfish for the sake of the child. That is really hard to stomach when you're a child whose parents don't do that for you. And that's considered parental rejection, right? So you don't have to say, get out of my house to feel parental rejection, or you don't have to have had your parents say, get out of my house to feel parental rejection. Parental rejection comes anytime a parent chooses something else besides the kid. Now, in traumatized kids, that seems to be awfully egregious, right? A lot of times those parents are choosing a lot of other things, like not just I'm choosing to work late instead of going to your dance recital. That doesn't necessarily make for trauma, but I'm choosing to work late every night, and you 7-year-old child are left to your own accord, 12 to 15 hours a day. That could induce some trauma. So the idea that these kids somehow see the world the same way as everybody else is silly, right? They don't. They see the same things that we see, that a parent, for all intent and purpose, will break down everything for their kid. And they face the reality that their life isn't like that. So if everybody else, no matter how dysfunctional, everything over here says, oh, the parents will get here, those mama instincts will kick in, that daddy protectiveness will kick in no matter what, and then they're faced with that not being the case in their own lives, well, what choice do they have but to turn and look at themselves and go, what's wrong with me? Why am I so flawed that I don't get this that everybody else gets? And it's not like there's this, social media has helped. There is a larger group of people, but that come together and realize that it has nothing to do with them, that it has to do with the parents and their inability to parent. But even when you get to the point where you can understand that, which takes years and takes you to be old enough to be able to connect with other people like that, it still hurts, right? It still hurts to understand that the fundamental thing that a parent is supposed to do, which is to love their child, was difficult for them. Something about them made it difficult. And I know that that's not true, and we know that that's not true, but the child doesn't know that. And if you are an adult child that had that message sent over and over and over again, it does feel like it's you. It's hard to divorce yourself from the idea that there is not something fundamentally wrong with you that is unlovable, that is uncared for, or uncareable for. And so I think one of the major things that we need to understand as parents of hurt children is that, especially in the foster and adoptive community, but if you're parenting a child that was hurt by someone else other than you, that they have a fundamental feeling of being unlovable. And that feeling is not going to go away just because you tell them that they're lovable, right? That has to be a long, slow, sloggy road to understanding this feeling that you get, that you don't ever have to wrestle with if you've got healthy families, right? You just don't ever have to wrestle with it. But feeling like that you were unlovable is a horrible feeling, and it is not something that is easily fixed. And so a lot of times foster and adoptive parents, or parents that are stepping in for a child that was hurt in another situation, they'll say, well, I don't understand, because I tell them that I love them, and they know that we're safe, and they know these things, and I tell them. But when you speak to a hurt child, you're talking here, and what they need to do is feel it here. So what do? How do you make a child feel loved? Well, that's a really hard question. The answer is there's a lot of things that you can do. And through the rest of the series, we're going to talk, it's always going to come back to that. It's always going to come back to how do you parent in a way that lets the kid know that their feelings matter, that they matter, that they are important, that they are lovable, that they are not flawed, inherently flawed by this, the most important rejection you could ever get. Being rejected by a parent is the hardest rejection you will ever face, because it is fundamentally, it doesn't make sense in our inherent DNA to be rejected by a parent. So when that happens, it is the worst pain, the worst kind of rejection you could ever face. So we'll talk about it, but a lot of it comes with this patience and this understanding that just because you cognitively tell somebody that they are loved and they are cared for does not mean that they feel it on the inside. They may cognitively know that they're supposed to feel that way, but it doesn't settle in until it settles in. And for those of you that are adults of trauma, that were hurt children, I think this is an important thing for you to remember too, that a lot of times the adult children that I know wrestle, and I know a lot of them, the adult children of trauma wrestle with this idea that they are never good enough, that they constantly have to either one of two things, either be super amenable to just about everything, or they become hard as nails and they just start to kind of pick fights with people, or they're blowing people off. I mean, there's a lot of other coping mechanisms in between, but you know, there's all of these polarizing kind of attributes that you kind of create that it's all feeding towards the same problem, which is this kind of feeling of fundamental rejection. Like, it's like, I mean, for those of you who are religious, consider it like God came down and said, I don't love you. Like, out of all of the people in the world, I hate you. But can you imagine that? Like, for those of you who are religious, right? Just think of that. Think of that fundamental idea, right? That's what kids feel like when their parent rejects them, especially if there is no religious piece to call on to. And I'm not saying you should be a part of religion, but I'm saying, like, it's that significant for them. And if there is not something that tells them that they aren't rejectable, then they're going to consistently fight that. So that was less helpful, I guess, is more of it was informative. I want you guys to understand this concept that the hurt children in our lives feel this way, and getting through that is, or because of that, even, you have a lot of identity problems with kids that hurt children experience. They kind of go through a lot of different tumultuous phases of identity. Not always, but you know, just some. Sometimes they are adult and they don't understand who they are. Sometimes they come into my office and you'll always hear it like, I don't know who I am. I don't understand. I've made all of these choices and all of these decisions throughout my life. And I'm sitting here and I'm 30, 40, 50 some odd years old. And like, I honestly don't know if I meant to do any of them. You know, a lot of that is children that came from trauma. And just kind of understanding that if you didn't fix that piece of you, if you are an adult child of trauma and you never fix that piece of you, if you don't feel truly loved and accepted, truly, like to the core, not cognitively, I know I'm supposed to feel that way, but you don't feel like that to hear, then you're going to have some output. You're going to have some sort of concepts, behaviors, ideas that are going to be congruent with this unlovable idea or this unlovable tag, and that's going to affect you. And then for the parents of children that are that way, telling them is not enough. And we just need to always remember that. Because there's nothing worse in the world than feeling unloved and unlovable. It's nothing. There's nothing worse. And so I think it's important for us to remember that always, no matter how bad the behavior gets, no matter when they're setting your couch on fire or they're throwing poop on your walls, right? Like, we got to deal with that. Yes, I understand that. It's important to remember that comes from a place of so much hurt that it's just an insurmountable amount of hurt. And if you've never been there, it's very hard to understand. And it's hard to understand why they would still love these people. Well, they love them because of their parents, right? They're supposed to love them just like the parents are supposed to love them. And it just doesn't work that way. Sorry for the jump. My camera shifted. All right, so that's it for the day. I'm gonna take that as a sign to call it. Next time, I don't know what we'll talk about. It'll be a fun topic, I'm sure. If you have any questions, let me know. Email me, Facebook me, call me. Don't call me. Text me. So there's that. You guys have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.